IT band injuries are some of the most common injuries for runners, and I can tell you from personal experience that they suck. My training was interrupted for 4 months this year because of a recurrent IT band injury, which also helped me spiral into a deep, dark depression. So thank you, body. So today, I'm going to try to tell you everything I did to fix it, what I felt worked, and what I definitely know did not. This is also going to be a great video if you're trying to avoid an IT band injury. So let's do it. I don't know. So real quick, because there are plenty of people who can describe anatomy better than me, your IT band runs on the outside of your thigh from just above your hip to below your knee. You can tell you're having an IT band issue when you have pain on the outside of your knee is the typical pain point. You might also feel general tightness along the IT band itself. Now, most of the literature out there is going to tell you that it is a 4 to 6 week recovery time on average, but if you do a little bit more digging, you can start to find a lot of instances where these injuries go 4, 5, sometimes 6 months. Mine ended up being 4 months because I think I did a lot of things wrong. Initially, what I tried to do was I just tried to keep running. This was dumb. This was very dumb. If you're feeling pain, you should not be continuing to run, especially if it's not like a pain you're familiar with. I think we all get these little tweaks and stuff from time to time, but this was a new pain for me, and I tried to run through it. That was a mistake. The next thing I did was just try to take time off. This is what I do for basically every injury. I just take some time off and go back when I'm feeling better. Usually it's only a couple of days. This was also surprisingly dumb. I wasn't strength training, I wasn't stretching, I wasn't doing any cardio, and this was a mistake because when I did start doing research on how to help heal this injury, I found that most people said it comes from a lack of flexibility and also, more importantly, I think, a lack of strength. In my situation, after that 4-week period that I read about initially, I decided to go on a run. This was extremely dumb. I was still feeling quite a bit of pain on the outside of my knee, but because I had seen 4 to 6 weeks, you can usually come back, I was like, well, maybe I'm at the end of it. So I taped up my knee with KT tape. I'll have more on KT tape later and my feelings about using it to come back from this injury. I went on a run of about 3 miles, started to feel pain pretty much immediately, but did not stop because I was with a group and I'm proud, like a 3-mile run was going to impress someone, I guess. And after that 3-mile run, I quickly found myself right back to square one. After finding myself there, I decided to feel sorry for myself for a couple of weeks. Still didn't really do any strength training. I did start cycling a little bit, but after a couple of weeks of the pain not going away with certain activities, I started to do some research, which is when my healing process started. So I am going to walk you through my research, what I found to work the best, and I will link to all these resources below. So as a general rule of thumb, if you hear me mention a source, it's in the description. I'm not going to tell you every time. The thing I attribute the most to my recovery was a solid strength training plan. Your IT band is supported by your quads, your hamstrings, your TFL, and your glutes, and mine, especially on my left side, which is where I had my injury, were particularly weak in comparison to my right side. I based my strength training routine off of an article that I read called The Anatomy of a 6-Month IT Band Injury, which you should go read in full. It is very informative, but here is the workout that I did. It's a slightly modified version of theirs. First, you want a resistance band. You're going to start off with 25 side leg raises on each side. Then you're going to do 20 clamshells on each side as well. After that, and I generally throw in more of these kind of randomly, is 10 leg raises each side. I specifically focus on my left side because that is where my injury was. Then I would do 10 hip bridges, then usually go back to, again, those leg raises. Then I would do single leg hip bridges, 10 of those each side. Then you get up on your feet and do this little side shuffle thing that I'm doing right here that you're seeing right now. This is super effective. I kind of just do this as long as I can handle it. Then I would do 15 pistol squats on each side, and then 20 squats usually. Sometimes I'll do more. There's loads of exercises that different people will recommend. These are the ones that seem to work for me. All of these exercises I did in quick succession. Don't really take a break in between them is the way I found it to work the best. I also added a gym routine that focused more on full body moves and also chest and shoulders as well. I added this later on into the injury when I was feeling like I was getting close to being better. I would avoid high impact stuff initially. And I still do each of these workouts at least once a week. This was in addition to core work every weekday. The other thing that was definitely effective for me was a daily stretching routine that I implemented based off of Yoga with Adrian's Runner's Cool Down, which again, I'll link to down below. I did focus more on the muscles that are supporting the IT band. Again, we talked about those earlier. So that meant a lot of runner's lunges, this little froggy guy right here, one-legged pigeons, forward folds, and downward dogs, kind of just pedaling out the legs. Stretching for me is one of those things that I never want to do, but I do stay healthier when I do it, so add it to the list of the 20 hours we all spend a week running. So if you stopped running right when you started to feel pain and implemented this workout routine, I would guess you could probably stick to that 4 to 6 week projection. I think a lot of this injury is a result of weakness on one side. The muscles are, for a lot of people, weaker on one side of the body than the other. So implement this early and you probably are going to have a shorter injury. But if you're like me and you continued through the pain like a big dummy, then here's what else I did. So rock tape was a big one for me. Rock tape, rock floss. Rock floss was a big one for me. Rock floss is basically this like sticky rubber sort of band situation. Hopefully that's focusing in. That you essentially you put it above and below the injury site, and it's meant to sort of focus blood flow into that area, I guess. Honestly, it seems a little pseudoscience-y to me, but there is a lot of there are a lot of videos with PTs who actually are using this and are using it on runners. So apparently it's gotta work to some degree. And it definitely, I mean, I was probably on the path to recovery before I started using it, but you know, it was probably 2 weeks after I started using this, I was pretty much healthy and running again. So again, you put it above and below the injury site, and then after that, you essentially kind of just manipulate the joint. So I would do squats sometimes just kind of sit in a chair and move the leg if I was still looking for something sort of lower impact. I think you're not meant to keep it on for more than 3 minutes at a time, so you don't want to like sit around with this on for sure, because it kind of stops some circulation. It is definitely not cheap. I don't remember how much it was, but I'll put the price right up here. Definitely can get it on Amazon, but seemed to be worth it. Just add it on to the end of your strength training routine and should be good to go. Next up for me was acupuncture and cupping. This is another nice to have. Of course, it is not cheap for the most part. I was lucky in Los Angeles. There is a place called Yosan University, I believe it is. It's people are learning to do acupuncture essentially, so you're kind of taking your life into your own hands. Just kidding. There's usually people who have been in the program or are about to graduate. But I did find acupuncture to be, I think, good for the joint, and also just generally, I don't know, you feel great after doing acupuncture. They do like depression and anxiety panels, and if you don't struggle with that, congratulations. And it did seem to loosen and activate the muscles a little bit more. Definitely like immediately after getting acupuncture for, you know, the next couple hours, I wouldn't feel like anything in the knee. So I think it worked kind of like short term. And again, I just kind of recommend it as a wellness thing in general. Finally, foam rolling. I am not a big foam roller. I think I tend to underrate it, and it probably is effective, and I need to get better about it. But I was good about it while I was injured. You will see some conflicting information about whether you should be foam rolling the IT band itself or the muscles surrounding the IT band. I found what worked and like kind of gave me relief was doing a little bit of both. So I would do, again, the muscles we talked about, glute, TFL, hamstring, and quads. And then I would also hit the IT band itself. For this topic, I would recommend watching Tone and Titan's video on foam rolling for an IT band injury. That is where I got my information from. So once you've done all of this and you are pain-free, I would definitely recommend starting slowly. I started by basically for 2 weeks, I was kind of just walking and then running maybe 400 meters at a time. And then over the week, I would kind of extend it to half a mile, and so on and so forth from there. You can also do it by time, run a couple minutes, walk a couple minutes. Just obviously, hopefully it's obvious, don't go back into your normal amount of volume. I also implemented a warm-up, which has been very helpful. I feel honestly dumb. That's the theme of the entire video. For not implementing one of these earlier, you start fresher, you feel like you're ready to go a little bit quicker. Basically, I'm just doing a couple like half squats, leg rocks back and forth, Leg swings are also very effective for me, but start planning on putting in 5 to 10 minutes before runs, especially when you're just getting back into it from an IT band injury. I would also really advise against going back to an old pair of shoes, especially if they have more than probably 100 miles on them. I know it's a bummer that you're like having to buy a new pair of shoes, but especially if they're really high mileage, just don't go back to the pair of shoes you got injured in. Like I'm sort of like, why would you do that? But also, if they are relatively new, it can be a bit of a bummer, but I don't know. I never like going back to the same pair of shoes after an injury. In fact, I'm thinking about switching brands completely because I've been getting injured lately. So that is how I got back to it. Again, over the course of 4 months. It sucks. Don't do what I did. Don't do all those things that I said early on in the video not to do. Before we wrap, I do want to talk about a little bit of conflicting information. We talked earlier about the conflicting information about whether you should foam roll your IT band or the muscles surrounding it. And I wanted to touch on a few more things that I saw conflicting information on, because honestly, there's quite a bit. Stretching your IT band doesn't hurt to try, but there's a lot of people who say you can't really physically stretch your IT band. I think this impulse comes from the fact that it does feel like a tightness at first. It feels like your IT band just needs to be tightened. You know, there's something over there that just needs to be stretched. But I don't know that you can actually stretch your IT band. Some people say you can, some people say you can't. I don't think you're going to injure it further by trying to stretch it. So again, doesn't hurt to try, but my understanding is it is an injury that is caused by weak muscles, and the IT band is going over the bone on the outside of your leg, and that's where the inflammation is coming from. So it's more important to focus on strengthening those muscles, and again, I do think flexibility is going to be a big help for you. But if you find some good IT band stretches and it's making you feel good, absolutely do it. Another place where there's a lot of conflicting information is whether or not you should be doing other forms of cardio to stay, in relative shape for running. I would say if you can do so pain-free, absolutely go for it. I think the problem is that cyclists also will get IT band pain. You do run the risk of maybe injuring it further if you're pushing too hard on the bike and you're not realizing it. If you feel like you can afford to take total rest, and honestly, you should probably take total rest for at least a couple weeks, maybe a week, then absolutely, by all means, focus on strength training and stretching. I personally did try to cycle as much as I could because I wanted to stay in relative cardio shape, but again, don't push it. You'll be surprised if you've been running for a while, especially how quickly your fitness does come back after you get back to running. Heating and icing the injury. So icing is going to help with inflammation. Heating is going to help relax the muscles, I guess is kind of the general thought process here. Ultimately, though, I think inflammation is a symptom of a bigger problem. It's not going to hurt to ice it. I mean, sometimes it actually did physically hurt me to ice the IT band, and not like it was too cold or anything, but it stiffens everything up a little bit. I would say do it again if it makes you feel better. And typically, I'm a big fan of icing for recovery, ice baths and stuff like that. I didn't really find it particularly helpful personally when recovering from the IT band injury. This injury ultimately isn't like a sprain where you can sort of ice things away. That's a way to kind of speed up healing. From my understanding, it's mostly muscular weakness that needs to be worked on, and that inflammation is just caused by a lack of support from those muscles. Finally, I want to re-stress this again. I don't push it with KT tape. If you're not ready to go, you're not ready to go. KT tape is not going to help something that's still injured. I think a lot of runners have success with more full knee support KT tape setups. And I'm not saying kinesiology tape doesn't work, but I think a lot of runners have a tendency to think, well, if they have this crutch and something they can use to get back faster, they're going to do it. And you're going to re-injure yourself if you're not doing the proper strength training and flexibility exercises, and you're just trying to use KT tape to solve this problem. It's just not going to work. So don't try to tape it and go back too soon. Make sure you wait until you're totally pain-free. All right, you guys, this has been a bit of a long one, but I hope it was helpful. I truly hate IT band injuries. I think they're so dumb and they last so long. So avoid it by implementing these things early, and honestly before you're even having pain is probably the best way to go about it. Let me know what worked for your IT band injuries in the comments below. I'd definitely be interested to hear other people's exercises to see if they work for me as well. Or if you'd just like to tell me that I'm completely wrong about all of this and a general menace to society with my dangerous IT band takes, have at that as well. Thanks for watching, you guys, and until next time, I love you. I still need to think of a good sign-off. Bye.